Hey guys, Victoria here and welcome back to my channel. So today's video is going to be all about flashcards. And in today's video, I'll be talking about why flashcards work, the science behind flashcards, and I'll be showing you guys some of my flashcards and the mistakes that I made. I'll be talking about some do's and don'ts when it comes to making flashcards, and I'll also be talking about the best way to use flashcards effectively. Flashcard is obviously an important study tool which can help you so much if you know how to use it the correct way, and it can help to make revision much more effective. So why do flashcards work and how does it work? Well, flashcards work on the basis of active recall, and active recall is a process in which you actively retrieve information from the back of your brain. Instead of spoon feeding yourself, you're going to make yourself to recall what you have already learned. And the principle behind active recall is that the harder you work to retrieve the information, the better you will remember it. So you're going to allow your brain to forget some of the information first before forcing that information from the back of your brain again. So the harder you work to retrieve information, the better the information will stick to your brain. So that is the science behind active recall, and it works on the basis of flashcards. And in the last part of today's video, I'll be talking all about the best way to use flashcards effectively, and that works on the basis of active recall. So it works on the basis that the harder you work to get that piece of information, the better that information will actually stick to your memory. But first of all, I'll be showing you some of the flashcards that I made when I was studying for a foundation in science. There are flashcards for chemistry and also for biology. So the thing is, recently I have decided to use flashcards as a study tool for medicine, and I've been reading more about the right ways to make flashcards. And when I look back at the flashcards that I made during foundation in science, I realized that I have made a lot of mistakes. Like, these are bad flashcards, and I'll tell you why. First, we'll take a look at my biology flashcards. These are the flashcards that I made for the first topic. And so I actually wrote down here on one side are the name of the scientists. As you can see here, Anton van Leeuwenhoek, and then there's number 2, Robert Hooke, right? And then I wrote down their contributions in the back there. So this guy invented microscope and then saw tiny living things and all that stuff. But well, the mistake that I made here is that I combined two information onto one flashcard, if you can see. Why can't you combine two information into one flashcard? It's the fact that when you see like Anton van Leeuwenhoek, and then you remember his contributions, right? He invented microscope and all that stuff. But when you refer to the answer here, it is inevitable that you will like read the answers here as well. This way you can't make sure that you actually know the contributions of Robert Hooke. Maybe you just like glimpsed at it when you were referring to this answer. Also, sometimes you tend to just like imagine these two people together and then like relate it to their contributions, and it's just not a good way to combine two pieces of information onto one flashcard. It's just not a good way to do it. To make sure that you know each piece of information well, you can only put one information onto one flashcard. So you're going to put one scientist here, one flashcard, and then Robert Hooke is going to go onto another flashcard. This is what I learned when I was reading about making flashcards effectively. It is to only include one piece of information on one piece of flashcard. Like, do not try to save paper. You want to utilize flashcard, you can only use one flashcard for one piece of information and not more.
Then if we move on, there is one more.
Okay, so this flashcard is on the 7 characteristics of living things, and I use this acronym to memorize it. It says MERG. MERG. So M would stand for movement, and then R would stand for reproduction, S for sensitivity, and for nutrition and all that stuff, right? So it is so good to have an acronym, but the bad thing about this is that I wrote the acronym itself on the prompt part of the flashcard. Like, I'm supposed to look at this and I'm supposed to think of the acronym, but it doesn't work because I already wrote the acronym here. So it doesn't give me a chance to like retrieve information from the back of my brain. So if this were to be a good flashcard, then I shouldn't be writing the acronym here. I should only write the 7 characteristics of living things here, and then the acronym would have to go at the back of this, and then all this information. Another example is this flashcard, which is on the modern cell theory, and I put 4 in bracket. So I think that it's okay to write the amount of information in brackets because there are 4 modern cell theories here, and this acts as a prompt for me to remember that there are 4 modern cell theories. Now we'll look at my chemistry flashcards, which are on electrochemistry, redox fraction. So I had redox fraction and then the definition on the other side of the flashcard. As you can see, redox fraction and the definition, and I underlined some keywords as well. So this is the example of a good flashcard, and this is the example of a bad flashcard. So we have here oxidation, number 1, and then I wrote here number 1, loss of electrons, and then number 2, reduction, number 2, the gain of electrons. So although I put numbers and I use different color pens to differentiate it, it is still a bad flashcard. A good flashcard, on the other hand, would have 2 separate pieces of information on 2 flashcards. So here we have oxidation, loss of electron. Then we have reduction, gain of electron. So these 2 are good flashcards because I did not combine 2 information onto 1 flashcard. They are still separate, so I can make sure that I know these 2 information separately. And if it's this one, then I might just confuse the sequence, if you get what I mean. Now I'll talk about the mistakes to avoid when making flashcards. So if we take a look at the flashcards that I made way back when I was preparing for my physics SPM, this is on the first chapter on the introduction of physics. As you can see here, I squeezed all the information into 1 flashcard, and I really didn't know the use of flashcard, because if I knew, then I would be writing like derived quantity on one side and then the definition would be on the other side of the flashcard. This is the example of like a super bad flashcard with all the crammed information and everything. A good flashcard will look like this. Base quantity would be on one side and then the definition would be on the other side, and that's it. So the whole point of the flashcard is for you to lay out simple information that your brain can process easily. So if you make your flashcard too complicated and if you squeeze all the information into 1 flashcard, then it will be just useless. The second mistake to avoid when making flashcards is to have answers that are too long for your flashcard. So an example of a good flashcard is like this, right? So you have redox fraction on one side and the definition on the other side. So it's the reaction that involves oxidation and reduction taking place simultaneously. This is a short and concise definition. Sure that there are a lot of versions of definitions of redox reaction, whether in books, in textbooks or online, but it is important to settle for one which is short and but at the same time gives you all the marks that you can get from that definition. So try to keep the answers to your flashcards short and concise. You don't want it to be too long. If you are writing an entire essay for the answer of the flashcard, then you probably won't be able to remember it no matter how many times you go through it. It is important to condense your points into short forms. The third mistake to avoid when making flashcards is to not make your flashcards too boring. Like you can use your sense of humor, you can use acronyms, you can use color pens to make your flashcards as interesting as possible. And as you can see here, there's definition, and then I simply went and underlined the keywords with red pens, which isn't super not boring, but also it's just something which can like wake me up. The red pen, I know that the keywords are oxidation and reduction. So even if I forget all the rest of the words, I can still remember oxidation and reduction, which are the 2 words which will get me the points. So try to make your flashcards as interesting as possible. Do not be afraid to go crazy because your brain can remember weird stuff a lot better. Number 4, do not make your flashcards too small. You have to know which is the right flashcard size for you. I think like this is about right. It could be any size actually, but there are small flashcards, right, that they sell in the bookstores, like these small flashcards. I feel like there's not enough space to fit in information onto those small flashcards, but it does make it more portable. So if you want to use small flashcards, there's no problem, you can go ahead and use it, but just try not to squeeze in too much information onto one flashcard, or you won't even feel like reading it in the future. Now we'll move on to the part of the video where I tell you what you actually have to do, and number one is to make your own flashcards. So there are flashcards sold in bookstores, in popular bookstores, and there are pre-made flashcards online through an app called Anki, which are useful and everything, but I think the best way to utilize flashcards is to make them on your own. Because if you make the flashcards on your own, you're going through the material once, and then when you review it, you're already doing it for the second time, so that can help to strengthen your memory. And when you make the flashcards on your own, you can personalize it, you can make it colorful, you can create acronyms, you can draw something to make yourself remember stuff, and those are the things which will determine whether you actually remember those stuff or not. The second thing to do is to have one piece of information in one flashcard and not more, like not even two. As you can see here, I had the definition for oxidation and reduction in one flashcard, and this is the example of a bad flashcard. But if I just separate it into two flashcards, it will be much more effective, and I would make sure that I know both information as well. Number 3 is to study flashcards in both directions. So I think that this is pretty self-explanatory. If the questions twist, you need to know the information in both directions. So the best way to review it is to know it in both directions. And another thing is to shuffle your flashcards, like the way you shuffle your cards. Shuffle your flashcards so that you're not just depending on the order of the flashcards to remember the information. Now I'll be talking about the best way to utilize flashcards effectively, and the technique is called spaced repetition. So by using spaced repetition, you can ensure that you know all the information equally and you know all your cards. So when you review your flashcards, it is natural that you can remember some things more easily than the others. But how do you make sure that you know all the cards equally? So this is where spaced repetition comes in, and for this all you need are a few rubber bands. So you're going to lay out your flashcards in such a way, and you can tie them up with rubber bands in stacks so it's easier to keep them. But anyways, you have here every day, every other day, every week, and then every month. So you can test yourself on one flashcard. So say you test yourself on this flashcard, and if you know the answer, the flashcard can proceed to every other day. So you'll end up here. And then when you review your flashcard every other day and you still get it right, then the flashcards will proceed to every week. So it'll come here, and it goes on and on. However, when you get one flashcard wrong, it's going to go all the way back to the first stack, which is every day. So for the flashcards which you already know, you're going to see it less and less frequently, and for the ones you don't know, you see them more frequently. You read them every day. So this is definitely a good way to ensure that you know all the flashcards before your exam. So for easy storage, you can just tie them up with rubber bands and then label them with post-it notes, and you can stack them up. So you can just keep them in a container, and then when you want to revise, you can lay them out like this, and then do the things that I said just now. So that was the best way to utilize flashcards, and I hope that you guys have understood my explanation and how it works and everything. Today's video have just been all about flashcards, and I think that it is such an important study tool, which is why I wanted to make a video about it. I personally use flashcards as well, and I've been trying to learn from my mistakes after I make them, and I've been trying to read up on flashcards to know how to use flashcards more effectively, and those are all the things that I've learned throughout the years of making flashcards, and also from all the sources that I could find. And I just wanted to compile everything that I know about flashcard into this one video and present it to you guys, so that hopefully after this you can know how to use flashcards more effectively. Remember to give this video a like if you feel like this type of videos could help you, and if you want me to make more of this video, and if you haven't already, please subscribe down below as well. That's all for today's video. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys in my next video.